This video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN is a virtual private network service and is really easy to use. Click a button and bam, you're connected. Change your location with just a few clicks. In the past, using some internet communications exposed my IP address, which allowed nefarious people to launch denial of service attacks on me, a huge problem for broadcasters. If I had a VPN, that would have stopped those attacks flat by hiding my IP address. You can get ExpressVPN for less than $7 a month with a year subscription at expressvpn.com/TrumpSC, and it has a 30-day money-back guarantee. Get it using the link below. The Madman! Welcome to the top custom cards of the week. We'll get started with an iconic card, Arthas Menethil, 6 mana, 4/5, Divine Shield. At the start of your turn, if this minion is frozen, become the Lich King. Should probably say transform into the Lich King. Design 5 stars, balance 3 stars. You know, maybe this should be a paladin card, but it is very difficult for paladins to freeze things. I think I'm alright with Arthas Menethil being a neutral character, even though he's quite obviously a paladin. Sometimes gameplay trumps flavor. Arthas Menethil seems a bit weak because this is Sunwalker without taunt, and replacing taunt is the text at the start of your turn. If this minion is frozen, transform into the Lich King, and it's pretty tough to justify doing this instead of just playing the Lich King. How cheaply can you freeze Arthas by yourself? It'll usually cost an amount that's equal to the Lich King, and what's worse is if you actually freeze Arthas Menethil, obviously they're going to try to kill Arthas before he turns into a Lich King. So for the reason that it's very difficult to actually pull off this condition and have it survive the opponent's turn, and you have to waste resources to freeze Arthas, I think that Arthas Menethil should be bumped up in stats to something like a 5/6. Next up we have Zelly Axe, Perfect Specimen, a hero card for Paladin, 8 mana, Battlecry, equip a 3/2 weapon with lifesteal, and your hero is immune while attacking. Zelly Axe's hero power becomes Unity. Passive hero power, all mechs you play this turn have Magnetic, swaps into Precision the following turn. All mechs you play this turn have Rush, swaps into Perfection the following turn. All mechs you play this turn gain Lifesteal, and then swaps back and back and back. Design 2 stars, balance 1 star. This is obviously a top-down kind of design where the idea was, okay, so we're making Zelly Axe into a hero card. How can we play that off? Everyone knows its starting phrase of Unity, Precision, Perfection. And it's cute how you always go in that order, starting from Unity. Zelly Axe is a 3/2, so you got a 3/2 lifesteal weapon. But the question is, just because you can make a card like this, should you? There are several design problems wrong with this. This makes absolutely no sense as a paladin card. Zelly Axe is neutral after all. Secondly, and probably more importantly, is hero cards are very recognizable as major players of the game. Zelly Axe is just some random legendary robot. Yes, he was played a lot, but from a hero perspective, Zelly Axe doesn't quite fit the bill. Balance-wise, there are so many problems. Notably that all of the hero powers are just basically very unimportant. Your mechs have Magnetic, your mechs have Rush, your mechs have Lifesteal. Pretty much the only one that's useful is Precision. They have Rush. The other two are like very minor buffs. One could make the argument that you're losing your hero power in order to gain these minor abilities. That's actually a downside. So really, Zelly Axe is only useful for the life-stealing weapon, so that's 6 points of healing, plus the 5 armor that you gain from Zelly Axe. So you're basically playing this entirely for the weapon and the lifesteal effect, which we can call round to 11 health. And that might be worth about 6 mana, maybe even 5. There are a lot of things wrong with this, but probably the first thing that's wrong is simply Zelly Axe, you are not worthy of being a hero card. Clever Sales Goblin, 2 mana, 1/2. You're holding a dragon. You played an elemental last turn. Very cute idea. Design 5 stars, balance 2 stars. So the idea of the card is that he's so good at sales that he can convince you that you're supposed to get the dragon synergy, you're supposed to get the elemental synergy, There were even some hypotheses being that you could even have this guy be a pirate to add even more synergy capability. Maybe even the all to just sell you on the idea that you're good for all synergies. Currently though, taking the dragon and elemental thing, this is a minor enough effect that it fits well on a vanilla statted minion. So Clever Sales Goblin should simply be a 2 mana 2/3 or 2 mana 3/2, and for that reason the balance is very low, especially for a card with such a low mana that penalizes the balance rating even further. It's only a +1/+1, but +1/+1 on a 2 mana card is like such a crime in terms of being very underpowered. 100-headed horror. 10 mana, 10/10. Death Rattle. Summon 100 2/2 heads with taunt. Design 3 stars, balance 5 stars. Let's address the text on the card. Summon 100 2/2 heads with taunt. Oh, wait, you can only have 7. Haha, you're so clever. No, you're not really that clever. Sorry. So basically, this should simply state, fill your board with 2/2 heads of taunt, similar to a Violet Worms. And given that this is simply Violet Worm, except instead of 1/1s, you get 2/2 heads of taunt, it's not that interesting of design. Seems fine for balance as a 10 mana 10/10 do nothing immediately. They have to get through potentially 14/14 worth of heads, but you have to get rid of your horror somehow. That might not be that easy. Camp Counselor. 3 mana 3/3 Battle Cry, add a 1/1 youngster to your hand. Teach it a 1-cost spell. Design 5 stars. Balance 2 stars. I like the idea a lot, but the balance is really out of whack because I would consider the 1/1 youngster that's being taught a 1-cost spell to be superior to a lackey. And I think if you think about simply 3 mana 3/3 Battle Cry, add a random lackey to your hand, that would obviously be overpowered. Every single deck in the game would run that card. Control decks, aggro decks, mid-range decks. Now, teaching a 1-cost spell to a 1/1 is even better than a lackey. And remember, teaching at 1-cost spells is pretty much just from the class, and there's a very small amount of pull of 1-cost spells from most of the classes. Just imagine this guy in Zoo. Warlock has so many great 1-cost spells between Soulfire and Solarium and Mortal Coil. Picture having a 1 mana 1/1 that comes with that effect. That's insane. From Warrior, you've got Omega Assembly, you've got Shield Slam. Imagine that in Control Warrior. Now you're up against 4 copies of Shield Slam, potentially 4 copies of Omega Assembly. Wow, that's ridiculous. There's such a thing as perhaps having a critical mass of having too many of the same spell. Might be bad, might break the game. Is 4 copies of Omega Assembly too much value? If it isn't, then I think this card could be balanced by bringing it more in line to something like a 4 mana 3/2. Then it becomes a 4 mana 3/2 draw a good card, which is more in line with the pricing of these things. Dog Treat. 2 mana twin spell, give a minion +1/+1. If it's a beast, give it +2/+2. Design 5 stars, balance 5 stars asterisk. So the reason why I would give it 5 stars asterisk is because you could print this card at a time where Hunter was weak, but you cannot print this card while Hunter is strong, because this is clearly just a better Blessing of Kings for a deck that mainly runs beasts. And right now, surprise surprise, Hunters are just running beasts in mid-range Hunter. Yes, this is just extra arms with more limitation, but extra arms is ridiculous and can only be printed because Priest doesn't really have early game stuff. When you put extra arms into a deck that's already good in the form of mid-range Hunter, that just breaks that too much. This can only be printed, once again, when the deck supporting this is weak in order to buoy that deck. I think sadly, given that this has Twin Spell, there is currently no way to actually balance this card. Prove me wrong if possible though. The requirements are that it has to have Twin Spell still. Power Leecher, 4 mana Shaman, 3/4. Battle Cry, destroy every 0 to 2 cost spell in your hand, gain +1/+1 for each. Design, 2 stars, balance, 3 stars. Power Leecher is printed mostly because of the Hagatha Hero card in order to get rid of those useless 0 to 2 cost spells in your hand and turn them into a big minion. That's a terrible idea because it's such a narrowly designed card. It's only specifically good after you've played Hagatha and after you've played a bunch of minions in order to generate spells only if you get useless spells, which often can be used anyways. Are you going to be playing a card just for that specific situation? No. Do you want to build a deck around that? Build a deck around having a lot of trash spells, and then you play Power Leecher, and then you get a big minion on turn 4, and then you discard a bunch of cards? No, that's also a really bad mechanic. Seems unfun and very high rolly. Requires drawing the Power Leecher. No one would actually build such a deck. In order to balance the card, you would simply make it a 4-mana 4/5, since the ability is very minor. But the card is just a bad idea. Prepare Trouble, 0-mana rogue spell. Twin spell. No other text. Design, 1 star. Balance, 2 stars. There's a lot of problems with this card. First of all, I'll start with the obvious. Twin spell is a Rise of Shadows mechanic for rogue. Rogue is not one of the villain classes, so it should not have access to the twin spell mechanic. There's also a big problem with this design, and that's jnZaneHD Auctioneer exists. When you play this card with jnZaneHD Auctioneer, for 0 mana, you draw 2 cards. When has that ever been a good idea? A card like this is basically prevented from being printed. There's such a thing as playing a critical mass of these cards, and Prepare Trouble is a huge problem with critical mass because it's like not only 1 card towards that problem, it's basically 2 cards worth towards that problem. Of course, it enables all the combos as well, and that was the intent of the card, as well as playing with jnZaneHD Auctioneer, but it's just too nice towards that. Could there be a way to balance it? Yes, in theory. Not even that hard, you just nerf it to 1 mana, but still, it holds the main problem that such a card wouldn't be printed just because Rogue doesn't have access to Twin Spell. Therazane, 10 mana warrior card, 1/7, Taunt. Start of game, if all minions in your deck cost 6 or more, recruit this. Design, 2 stars, balance, I wasn't actually sure, but my gut tells me it's too strong. I'll give it a 2-star balance. So do you remember patches? Essentially starting the game with a 1/1 on the board. Well now, imagine starting the game with a 1/7 taunt on the board. Woof! For Control Warrior, it's not that absurd to not run any minions that cost 6 or less. So even though it looks like a huge build around type card, there's ways that you could certainly build Control Warrior decks, and Therazane will rule supreme. Yes, a 1/7 taunt is very unaggressive, but that is having, we're gonna call it 3 mana worth of ability out there on the board on turn 1. And yes, you have to build your deck around that quite a bit, and it's a pretty narrow deck restriction, but there's also the problem that because it's such a narrow deck restriction, she's not that interesting. Either a deck exists with her and like it's good, or a deck doesn't exist and you never see her around. There's also a further problem with this in that if you start with this card in your hand through Unlucky Mulligan, you're wrecked. Like, not only did you build your deck around a 1/7 taunt on turn 0, now she's stuck in your hand. That is not healthy gameplay. In the case that such a card were to be printed, the mana cost should probably be less to maybe something like 6, just so you're not punished that much for drawing her. Also, just to make it so that when you evolve minions to 10, you're not that sad. Anyway, start of game abilities are always very scary, and boy, if you're going to have a card start on the board as a 1/7 taunt, you better be sure that that is going to be okay. And yes, that is a heavy restriction, but still not okay. Alaria the Beast Tamer, a Hunter Legendary, 7 mana, 4/4, Battlecry. If your hero power has dealt 12 damage, summon King Crush. Design, 3 stars, balance, 4 stars. A few problems with this. Notably, Alaria has no lore reason to be a Beast Tamer. Probably makes more sense as a Rexar type card, or any Hunter card that's more known for actually dealing with beasts, other than Alaria. So that's kind of a flavor fail. This card mirrors jnZaneHD, where you're trying to deal damage with the hero power to summon a big guy. An interesting enough take on it because the Hunter hero power is very one-dimensional. It hits the face. For that reason, I think the balance is a little bit weak. King Crush is arguably less good than Ragnaros, and also dealing 12 damage with your hero power is quite a lot harder than 8 damage with the hero power for jnZaneHD. Notably because jnZaneHD was mostly used with Odd Mage, which meant you use your hero power 4 times and you get it. Plus, they had Daring Fire Eater, which each time you played it, knocked off 2 damage off of the requirement. For Alaria the Beast Tamer, you're pretty much going to have to use your hero power 5 times. And your hero power doesn't do much other than take your opponent's health down. 8 is probably too little, 10 seems like the sweet spot. Use your hero power 5 times. And you do set yourself back a lot in tempo by using your Hunter hero power. So those are this week's top cards, and I'm actually going to start ending each of these top cards of the week with my pick for the best one out of the bunch. This week, Trump's pick is Clever Sales Goblin. I think that the design of this is so good and the change is so easy, just make it a 2/3, that we'll give Clever Sales Goblin the Trump's top pick this week. Thank you again to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video. Get it using the link below.